And so this is a different standard than a lot of the other organizations and groups that come together and speculate about what's really happening here. And so that we are presenting a kind of a standard of reliability that we hope would help stabilize the community in response to all the data. And so that what we have come to believe as of this point is number one, that the UFO phenomenon is real, that this is not just a mistaken natural phenomena. That's not just, searchlights reflecting off clouds. It's not, flocks of birds that have been misidentified, and it's certainly not swamp gas, as some of them have asserted in the past. These are real. These are actual vehicles they're traveling in these extraordinary ways where they come down from 80,000 feet, which is technically outer space. They come down all the way to the surface of our ocean in 0.7 of 1 second, which is going at over 40,000 miles an hour inside our atmosphere, with no friction, and they stop dead on a dime right at the sea level, generating probably 6,000 Gs of force that would turn any living being inside a normal vehicle into mush at that rate. But then they just go underwater with no splash of any kind, and they go underwater and proceed at over 200 miles an hour under the water. And these are being monitored now. There was an entire aircraft carrier battle group deployed down off Baja, where there was a site between Baja and Guadalupe Island, an exact point of longitude and latitude down to the minute and second, where they've registered over 100 of these UFOs coming and going from this particular spot, and that they suspect that there may well be a major base under the ocean, under the Pacific Ocean, because at that particular site, there's an extraordinarily large mountain range under the sea, which has deep valleys, and that in one of these valleys, there may be a major base that the UFOs have operational. And it's way deeper than any of our submarines can go, and deeper than any of the kind of underwater vehicles can go to try to track. Now, so this reality of the phenomenon is the first of all important things to come to understand, that these are real. These are not imaginary. People who believe that they've seen UFOs functioning like this, going 40,000 miles an hour inside our atmosphere and turning on a direct 90-degree angle, coming out of a turn like that at that kind of speed, that these are real. And the fact is that they are being piloted by a non-human species that is here, and that we have in fact recovered one or more, actually 9 of these vehicles at least. We have them in our possession. They have been able to start looking at the technology of these craft. They've recovered bodies from these craft that they've now tested, and through DNA have shown that they are non-human beings. There are some 6 of these particular species that they have identified. There are the little 3.5 feet tall, large head with large almond eyes and little holes for nose, and 3 fingers, the arms that kind of are down a little bit longer than their knees, etc. And then there is a second species, which is almost 6 feet tall, that is just like that. The same kind of large head and large eyes and same appendages, etc. There is, in fact, a reptilian species, a separate species that is, 5.5 to 6 feet tall, humanoid, really quite benign, actually. But of course, reptiles have a particular reputation in our species. People get the kind of willies about reptiles. And so people had been projecting onto these beings kind of a negative press, as it were. But that certain people that we have talked to that have had direct face-to-face encounters with some of these reptilian beings and find them to be extraordinarily benign and very intelligent, extremely smart, and harmless. There's no record of them having done anything bad, the reptilian species. And then there's another species that is like 7 feet tall. They call them the mantis people, and that they're extraordinarily thin and skinny and big and tall and kind of hunched over like this. That people think they look like praying mantises, and they call them the mantis people. And they always seem to be sort of in charge. If people see them in the presence of any of the other species, they seem to be giving direction to the others as to what to do. And then there's this one that is very problematic and quite confusing, that is asserted to be virtually identical to human beings. And this is presumed by many of the reports to be a species that comes from the Pleiades, a particular constellation of 7 stars that you can track from Orion's belt. And you just look off to the right of Orion's belt, and you'll see a constellation of these 7 little stars that are all together. And this is the Pleiades constellation. And a number of people, Billy Myers and others, have asserted that they have had face-to-face encounters with beings that look virtually identical to us. Our institute has taken no position on that, because that puts us into an entirely other octave of reality, of trying to determine what the relationship may be between us as a species and this other group that are reported to be Homo sapien, basically. So we haven't taken any position on this, but we have acknowledged that there are extraterrestrial species that are coming and going here to our planet, and that we, our United States intelligence community and our Defense Department, are in possession of the bodies of a number of these beings that have been tested and have been confirmed to be non-human. And very, very troublingly, there is now overwhelming evidence that has convinced us at the Institute, even pursuant to Rule 11, that some number of these species, usually the little short ETs and the big tall grays that they refer to, are engaged in a program of abducting individual human beings, sometimes entire families at a given time, and taking them into custody and subjecting them to major physical examinations, and then wiping their minds so that they don't remember these things, except under later either holotropic breathing exercises or various forms of hypnosis, being able to recall these experiences that they've had. But additionally, there are a series of very credible reports that female human beings, some female human beings, have been subjected to abduction, and the involuntary, though unconscious at the time, removal of female egg cells, and that these egg cells, female egg cells, have been gene spliced together with the genetic material from one of these species, and then re-implanted in the womb of the women, and so that the women then find themselves to be pregnant, even though they've had no relations with the man for ages, and they find themselves to be pregnant, and they confirm that. They go to the doctors and are confirmed that they're pregnant, and they carry the fertilized zygote through the entire first trimester, and then they're abducted again. And that they end up, after being abducted again, discovering that they're no longer pregnant. And so that there's a very clear pattern of information and evidence indicating that the fertilized zygote of the young baby is being removed and brought to term ex utero. And so that there is a program of hybridization going on. And so that there are hundreds of reports of this happening. And so that this is a set of factual information that our institute, based on all of our years, 50 years of doing professional investigations, have to our satisfaction confirmed to be going on. Okay, so the question arises, and also that one of the other pieces of information is that there are hundreds and hundreds of completely credible reports that the people who are being abducted and subjected to these physical examinations, are having telepathic communication with these extraterrestrial beings. And the extraterrestrial beings are trying to convince the people that we have to take measures as a species to stop the development and distribution and deployment of thermonuclear weapons on our planet, because this could actually terminate our entire species, that we could terminate ourselves. And in addition, we can terminate thousands and thousands of other species on our planet. Indeed, virtually all other living forms on our planet. And we could so contaminate the gene pool of the tiny minority of living things that survive a total thermonuclear exchange, that the genetic material would be so mutated that it would be useless in trying to regenerate a new life form on our planet. And that we have come at the New Paradigm Institute to sort of the operational thesis that what's happening here is that these extraterrestrial species are finding the genetic material on our planet, the various flora and fauna on our planet, to be an extraordinarily valuable resource for our galaxy, because the Earth and a comparatively limited number of other planets are capable of actually gestating life. That out of the hundreds of billions, indeed trillions of planets now that we are aware of now in our galaxy alone, that it's a comparatively rare thing to find a planet that is gestating life. And for that reason, these extraterrestrial species are extraordinarily concerned about the fact that we, in our development as the Homo sapiens species, have come up with this technology of thermonuclear weapons that can potentially terminate the development of life on our planet. And so that this message has been repeated over and over and over again. And when I was contacted by Dr. John Mack, when he was called up in front of this Harvard faculty committee and challenged for publishing a book about these encounters that people had had, that he turns out to be the fellow to whom the United States military was ordering officers who insisted upon filing reports about UFO encounters. The first thing that would happen is they'd be ordered to go get a psychiatric exam, which was a way of deterring any of the officers from filing these official reports. But those who insisted upon pushing through with the process and filing such official complaints, like Arnie Aronson, for example, who was the commander at Maelstrom, the Maelstrom nuclear missile base up in Montana back in 1967, when a UFO came over the Minuteman site and shut down all 10 of the individually wired Minuteman missiles, nuclear tipped missiles, and shut them all off. And Arnie Arnoldson insisted upon filing a report to NORAD about this and was ordered to get a psychiatric exam. And it turns out that they would send these people, some of them, to Harvard Medical School in Boston to have a psychiatric exam. And John Mack was the chairman of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And so these people would come to him, and he would put them through the entire battery of tests on their psychological stability. And he said that after one after another, he found them to be within the normal parameters of psychological normalcy, yet they were all insisting upon these stories about the encounters that they had seen. And so John ended up deciding that he said, this is either true that it's happening to them, or this is some really strange new psychological ailment that people have. And so he wrote an article that he submitted to the New England Journal of Medicine, the #1 peer-reviewed medical journal in the country. Now, he had written dozens of articles for peer-reviewed articles, and in fact was the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. That he won the Pulitzer Prize for publishing the definitive psychobiography of T.E. Lawrence of Arabia. And so he submitted this to them, and they sent it back to him and saying they weren't going to publish it. And so he said, well, I'll put some more footnotes in it. I'll do some more references. I'll make it much more technical and scientific. And he resubmitted it to them. And within 2 days, the executive secretary for Relman, Dr. Relman, who was the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, his executive secretary came to John's office and brought the envelope back and said that Dr. Relman wanted me to tell you that it's not been opened. We're not only not going to publish it, we're not even going to open it, and we're not going to read it. I mean, that's how things were back in 1994. And so John got upset, and he went to a publisher and got it published. And that's why he was dragged in front of this faculty committee at Harvard. And then he called me and asked me to legally represent him in front of the committee. And that's how I ended up having the privilege, as I pointed out earlier, of getting to go and interview all of these different people. And I became legal counsel for a thing he put together called the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research. And in that context, I got to interview dozens and dozens of people who had extraordinarily credible stories about having gone through this abduction experience and had these direct face-to-face encounters with these beings. And so I was able to, as an attorney, to be able to interview these various people, testing them for veracity, trying to determine whether any of them were credible enough to present to a jury that I would stand up and confirm my belief in their testimony. And so I was able to vet a number of these people to be prepared to present these people to Harvard University. And because of that activity, I was later contacted by Dr. Stephen Greer. And Dr. Greer put together a thing called the Disclosure Project, and he interviewed literally hundreds of people who had claimed to have had this kind of experience. And he brought me on to vet these people, to interview them and to test their veracity and to decide 24 people that we would present to the members of Congress. Which we did in May of 2001 at the National Press Club. We actually presented 24 major witnesses, a lot of them from major U.S. government organizations, including the chief investigator for the Federal Aviation Agency, who testified at length about having radar readings of UFOs following major commercial craft around, and then having CIA people show up at his office in the Federal Aviation Agency and order him to turn over the copies of the radar readings so that they wouldn't have any more, but he made a copy of them and made them available to us at the Disclosure Project. So I served as legal counsel for the Disclosure Project with Dr. Stephen Greer for 20 years. Okay, and I was then contacted by Luis Elizondo, who was the director of the top secret program inside the Pentagon, who in 2007 was brought on to be the chief of security for an advanced weapons special access program inside the Pentagon, investigating the UFO technology and its potentials for being developed as a new weapons system for our U.S. military. And he was so taken aback by his discovery of what was really going on, of them engaging in this project of trying to gather together UFOs and back engineer them, that he ended up founding a thing called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program inside the Pentagon. And he ended up feeling compelled along with the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, Christopher Mellon, to come forward to the New York Times and provide the famous videos now, the so-called Tic Tac videos that you probably have seen. These are our F-18 Super Hornet gun camera videos of UFOs right up close, and you can see them functioning, and brought them to the New York Times. And I was struck by the fact that the New York Times Board of Editors checked these things out and made the decision to publish these things. And so that particular set of events on December 17th of 2017 actually began this kind of latest period of looking into the UFO phenomena. It's kind of ebbed and flowed down over the decades since the events that took place at Roswell, basically in July of 1947. You had a number of sightings in 1954. You had all kinds of rumors going around. In 1954, that President Eisenhower had disappeared for like a 12-hour period on a trip into the Midwest, and had actually gone to a military base and had a direct face-to-face encounter with representatives of a UFO. And these other things that happened down through the years, but there had been a successful suppression of any official confirmation of this reality until 2017, on December 17th, when Lou Elizondo, the head of the top secret program, and Chris Mellon, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, came forward and publicly revealed the existence of this secret program. And that's the snowball that's been rolling here now, that you've been hearing more and more about. And David Grush came before the House Oversight Committee in July of 2023 and testified under oath that we were in possession of one or more extraterrestrial, non-human origin spacecraft, and that we were in possession of bodies of the pilots and occupants of these craft that had been demonstrated and proven to be non-human. And he testified in under oath in front of Congress. And very importantly, we realized that he had been authorized by the Defense Department to admit that. And so this was an extraordinarily important step here that's been taken, that the United States Defense Department Office of Pre-Publication Security Review had actually authorized him to testify publicly, to reveal to the world that we were in possession of non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft and bodies of the occupants that were non-human. So that moment, July 16th of 2023, was an extraordinarily important moment in our history, because the very next day, on the 17th of July of 2023, the United States Senate Intelligence Committee unanimously passed a 64-page bill called the UFO Controlled Disclosure Act, in which they passed into law out of the Senate side the mandate that the President of the United States appoint a 9-person panel to review every single document that existed inside our United States government pertaining to UFOs and the extraterrestrial intelligence. And that bill ordered all 6 of our United States military services, all 18 of our United States intelligence agencies, and all 32 of our United States Defense Department agencies, and all of the private aerospace corporations that may have been put into possession of any of these materials to try to examine them on behalf of the United States government. They were ordered to gather all of that information together and turn it over to the United States National Archives. Now that was an extraordinarily important moment that happened in 2023, and it went over to the House side, and it turns out that the person who was the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, a fellow named Michael Turner, from the 10th Congressional District in Ohio, which turned out to be the home base for the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is where the craft was taken from Roswell. and put there. And that's where it was one of the centers from which they've been trying to back engineer this stuff. And so he ended up being sent basically by the Aerospace Corporation to keep this secret. And he stuck his thumb in this thing to stop the bill from getting passed. But we passed 23 pages of it, of the 64, and we got an order commanding all of those agencies to gather together all the information about UFOs and the ET experience, everything that they've ever come into possession of since January 1st of 1945. And so that's the present state of the law. That was passed. That 23 pages of the 64-page bill have been passed, and they are now under orders to gather all of this together and stand by to turn it over to the National Archives as of October of this year. Okay? So the reason that I wanted to come and talk with you tonight, and to the other folks that are listening here, is to know that that's happening right now. That these military services and intelligence agencies and Defense Department agencies are under active orders from the United States Congress at the present moment to turn over this information to the National Archives this coming October. Okay, and so that you ought to mark that in your calendar because they're going to fight back and resist this. And what we have to do is we have to mobilize our people around the country to write to their individual members of the House of Representatives and write to their United States senators and demand that they do this. And very importantly, the Senate has now agreed, Michael Rounds, the Republican senator from South Dakota, and Chuck Schumer, the former majority leader of the United States Senate from New York, they have agreed to co-sponsor and repass the 64-page bill, which in addition to those other things that has now already been accomplished, is to mandate that the president appoint this 9-person board and that the board review all of that documentation and everything that we have in our possession, and that they publicly release everything that's 25 years old or more, which means all the way back to Roswell, back in 1947, go all the way back to the most famous instance, Betty and Barney Hill, in 1961. All of these major events that have taken place in the past, that the United States Senate, now led by the Republican Party, are going to insist that that be done. Okay, so that all of these dynamics are going on right now, and that we wanted to come out and share with you the fact that this process is actually underway right now, and that most people don't know anything about it. A handful of us even here have been following some of it, and you're familiar with some of it, but the House Oversight Committee has now officially set up a task force of 11 members of the Oversight Committee in the House of Representatives to constitute a task force on the declassification of all of the secret information about UFOs. Okay, and that task force is headed up by Congressman or Congresswoman Luna from Florida, and they're in the process of preparing to have a public hearing in the near future all about this. And so the question that we wanted to raise here is, what is the reason why they're fighting back so hard? Why are they concealing this information? And what are we going to do to get them to reveal it? And what are the implications going to be when this information is revealed? And that's what I wanted to talk about here in sort of the first portion of our gathering here this evening, and then I can answer a lot of questions about it. But the bottom line is that what I want to do here is I want to talk about what the implications are going to be, because if in fact this information that I've just outlined in general about the reality that we at the New Paradigm Institute are willing to confirm, and that we're going to be sharing the information with people all around the country in all 435 congressional districts. Our New Paradigm Institute has a project that is called Citizens for Disclosure. We're going to be asking you this evening to sign up, and all the people that are listening in the live streaming and the Zooms that are listening to go to this little dealie, whatever the QR code they call them now, and you can sign up. It'll take you right straight to the website of the New Paradigm Institute, and you can sign up to become a member of Citizens for Disclosure. And it will put you in touch with the other people that are in your congressional district who have signed up to be Citizens for Disclosure. There'll be people that are kind of the coordinators for each congressional district to help get everybody to communicate with each other. And we'll be sending you information, every week, a packet of information about updating you on where the developments are and answering questions that people have about the substance of what is the evidence to support each of these major postulates that we've set forth. Okay, so this will prepare you to engage with your other fellow members in your congressional district, and also we will assist you in preparing letters to send to your individual congressperson or senators, and it'll be crafted for your own particular district, because there are people here more than just up here in Marin County, or even in California. There'll be people all across the country that'll be listening to this tonight, and we want them, for example, the new head of the Intelligence Committee in the House of Representatives, Dan Crenshaw, is from the 2nd District in Texas, the 2nd Congressional District, just outside of the northern suburbs of Houston, Texas, that we're going to be communicating with people in his own congressional district and find out what all the issues are that they're the most interested in and give them the information about it. And so we're going to be doing that with regard to individual districts all around the country. And that's why we have a major complex website that is capable of doing that, of customizing the information to give to each of the districts so that you have the particular information that is the most salient for you in your own district, okay? And so that what's going to happen, however, is that assuming that we can be successful, assuming that all of us are going to do everything that each of us can do to secure this disclosure and to secure the passage, we're going to get the passage of the 64-page bill again in the United States Senate, because both the Republican and Democratic leadership of the Senate completely support this statute. But assuming we can get it into the House of Representatives, we're going to want you all to participate in sending communications to the members of the House of Representatives to pass this. And assuming that we get this passed, the next stage is going to come of us having to nominate the people that are going to be appointed to this 9-person panel, this board that is going to review the information and decide what information is going to be released to us right away. And our office, the New Paradigm Institute, is one of the citizen groups that has been authorized to nominate people for this particular 9-person board. And so that process is going to begin. As soon as we can get this statute passed, if we all do our job and get the House to agree to approve this bill, the next step is going to be for us all to work together to nominate the people. They have to have certain qualifications that are in the Senate bill. That one of them has to have, Defense Department experience. One has to have Intelligence Department experience. Other ones have to be scientists, physicists, historians, political philosophers. There are certain categories that have been set up to make up this panel, and that we're authorized to help nominate a whole. I guess you could call it a ticket for who the 9 people are that we're recommending, one for each of these different positions, and a backup person. Okay, and then the president is going to be the one to choose who are going to be on the panel. And one of the things they're assigned to do by the statute is to actually design and put together and provide to the president a UFO controlled disclosure campaign plan, a specific plan by means of which they're going to roll out all of the information that exists over a 7-year period. Okay. And at the same time, what we're going to having to be doing is figuring out what the new paradigm is in light of this new information. What kind of changes are we going to have to make in our geopolitical structures? our domestic political structures, our economic structures. I mean, if we're going to be provided a source of energy that is the craft to do what this craft has been seen to do, to come down from 80,000 feet and stop on a dime and go into the water and travel 200 miles, that these activities, they would require as much energy in that single movement of all of the nuclear power stations in the entire United States for a year. Okay, so that the energy source that these craft have and have available to us can in fact replace the entire petroleum industry and stop the generation of pollution into our atmosphere. And some of the other technologies may well be able to reverse some of the processes to remove the excess carbon that is in the atmosphere now. There are all kinds of things that can be done, but we have to prepare for this. And the problem is that virtually nobody is preparing for what to do because the government is so busy saying there's no such thing. And so that we know there's such a thing. And so we're out ahead of the power curve. And so what we've done is set up this institute to be able to reach out directly to our citizenry and start to participate in the decision-making that is going to be necessary to know how to amend all of our major institutions of our human family to respond to the download of information that we're going to be able to get from these other beings. Because it's important to remember, our star is 4.5 billion years old. But the entire universe is 13.78 billion years old. So our planet is only 3.7 billion years old. So what it means is that there are other civilizations inside our galaxy that are probably as much as 6 or 7 billion years older than we are, which means that they may have had 6 or 7 billion years to continue to explore these fundamental questions that we as a human species have been exploring for the last 10,000 years. You know, the questions of how our physical material universe came into being. What is the relationship between the material universe and consciousness? You know, is consciousness a function of the interaction between mass and energy that generates our consciousness out of this sum total of mass and energy that make up our bodies? Or did consciousness pre-exist and actually unfold the material universe into being out of condensed units of consciousness? You know, that what is the teleological endgame of our unfolding universe? Are we going to disintegrate into no thingness, or are we going to then recollapse down into a single point and then have another Big Bang explosion and have an oscillating universe? These are fundamental questions of cosmology and consciousness that we've been exploring in the realm of not only philosophy, but theology, you know, for all of these many decades. And so that we're at the very brink of potentially getting virtually definitive answers to some of these profound questions. And the question then, does that mean that we have to just believe whatever it is they tell us? And that we just become completely subjugated to whatever their view of reality is and their determination as to what place we play, you know, in the hierarchy of beings in the universe? Or are we going to be able to preserve some degree of our own agency, the exercise of our own free will as a species? These are all profound and fundamental questions that are not being addressed at the present time because our national security state has taken it upon themselves to keep this information secret and to maintain an active kinetic program to lie and cheat and steal and kill in some instances, to keep this information secret so they can get patents in these large aerospace corporations to own this technology. And so that this sinful structure that we have of a national security state that is in league with major private profit-making corporations are attempting to monopolize this information and keep it secret so that we as the human family can't participate in trying to figure out what the principles are and the values are that we want to have preserved in our relationship with the extraterrestrial civilization. But that's what we're doing at the New Paradigm Institute. And that we're hoping that because of the credibility that we've established over the last 50 years, of doing case after case after case after case, and proving in court what it is that we're asserting, that we want our people to have confidence in us, and we want to be able to have the organizational structures to be able to confirm the information and get it out to everybody, to answer everybody's questions, to provide the kind of information you need to back up what we're saying, so that when you contact your rest of your family members who think you're crazy anyhow already for you can come to places like this, right? You can say, look, let me show you why we're telling you the truth about some of these things. You know, these issues of consciousness, these issues of the environment, these issues of UFOs being real, that these are things that you want to be able to persuade your friends and neighbors to be true, because we have to do this right now. Because if we don't do this, and they continue to succeed in keeping this secret, they are engaged in a program right now of developing a technology to shoot down UFOs, to actually shoot down UFOs and take them captive, you know, and basically be engaged in acts of war, you know, against an extraterrestrial civilization that has technologies that are advanced of us, billions of years in advance of us. And because of their blinders on, because of the assignment that they've been given inside the military and the intelligence community, they are engaged in destroying this extraordinarily important opportunity that we have as a human family to become citizens of a galaxy, and to journey to the stars, and to be able to explore and gain the benefits of extraordinary new levels of technology. Okay. And so that's the nature of the task that we have at hand. And that's why I wanted to come together here with you tonight and just share some of this information about the kind of steps that need to be taken. We're going to have to determine how to amend not only our economic structures on our planet to absorb the new technology, but we're going to have to modify our political structures and geopolitical structures, you know, and our theological institutions, you know, that are rooted in premises that were actually put into place like almost 2,000 years ago. I mean, the premises of the Catholic Christian Church, for example, you know, were set basically in the Council of Trent, you know, that don't allow women to be priests and supported slavery and everything else. You know, that we have some fairly primitive principles operational. And so we're also going to have to be very active with regard to various religious denominations for them to start disclosing things that they've known about, that they know about the capacities that our human family has for potential levitation, for telepathy, for precognition. You know, there's all kinds of different faculties, talents that are referred to in the Bible. Of being able to speak telepathically in languages that each other understands. These are things that the religious institutions have suppressed in order to maintain their institutional authority over the masses of people. Both of these things are true. Government institutions and religious institutions have done this. Economic structures have done this to maintain the privilege of an elite percentage of the people over everyone else. What we need to do as a people is we need to rise up. We need to rise up together in a peaceful, conscious way to exercise every single democratic right that we have to actively participate in this process of promulgating the values and the protocols pursuant to which we're going to interact with this extraterrestrial civilization. And so I've come here tonight to invite you to participate in this, to not only contribute to us through the 501c3 public interest organization that we are, you know, and get tax deduction for your contributions, but also to participate, very importantly, as members of the Institute, to participate as members of Citizens for Disclosure, to participate in holding little coffee gatherings at your house, you know, bringing your neighbors and friends in for a Friday evening, and we will then send to you the various videotapes that start right here.
Dr. Greer, with whom he's associated, has talked about energy producing products that are at least potential.
Right.
Do any exist?
Well, one of the challenges is that the same people that are in charge of keeping this information secret have secured the passage of a of a national security invention act, so that when people apply for a patent on a particular form of alternative energy, et cetera, they've been being impounded and they're being taken into custody and kept secret, because they're saying that if this particular alternative source of energy gets developed, it's going to interfere with the petroleum industry, which is the undergirding of our petroleum dollar, and it's a national security problem. So that one of the things that we're going to be doing in the process of this disclosure is demanding what information is being suppressed because they think that it is going to potentially reveal information about the UFOs. There's a one whole argument they're making is that there's a category for classifying different inventions because it touches upon, for example, propulsion systems, and you wouldn't think that that would necessarily be a national security problem. But so the bottom line is that once we start rolling here and start getting them to be compelled to disclose the information, if this panel gets put together, this board, this 9-person board, one of the things that they're going to be doing is proposing specific new pieces of legislation that need to be passed, one of which will be amending this National Security Inventions Secrecy Act. So we're going to be getting access to a lot of those. Now, a lot of those may be mooted because there may be levels of technology that we're going to be getting directly from the extraterrestrial people that are so much more advanced than some of the inventions that have been suppressed that it'll make those moot. But the bottom line is everybody should have a right to secure a patent on their own ingenuity and stuff. So we're gonna get on that too. Okay. Yes. And let's go to one on the internet.
So a Zoom question. You had mentioned the possibility that President Eisenhower had actually met with. Is there any credible documentation or evidence you've seen that there's been direct communication between any of the extraterrestrial races and leaders?
Yeah. Well, the 1954 incident with Eisenhower, that there's a lot of circumstantial evidence raising suspicion about an event, because he disappeared completely without any prior announcement, for a 12-hour period when he was on a trip. And that he asserted that it was for an emergency dental thing because he had broke a tooth. So, but as far as we know, there's no evidence that he went to any dentist. So that's what has been established. And there have been a couple of people who have come forward who said they were at the military base where they said he arrived and that there was a whole security contingent. And so that they've got pieces like that, but that one hasn't been confirmed in detail yet. I had a conversation directly with Edgar Mitchell, who said that one of his very best friends, whom he was absolutely positive would never have lied to him, whom we've determined almost certainly was Cooper, his fellow astronaut, that in fact had been at Edwards Air Force Base when an event took place where 3 UFO craft arrived and hovered over the tarmac. One of them landed, and these 2 extraterrestrial beings, 6 feet tall, large head and eyes, got out, and there were 3 uniformed U.S. Air Force officers went out to meet them along with 3 people in suits, and they went into a hangar and they spent a few hours there together, and then the beings came back out and got in the craft and they all flew away. Now, that Edgar Mitchell said that he was completely certain that that was true, because his best friend had seen the film footage that was taken back before they had all these fake films all the time. It was a film that was taken officially of that particular set of events, and that his best friend had seen it. And so he was convinced it was true. At this point, we know that the ARROW office, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the ARROW office, is not following up on these leads. That various people have gone and presented to them this information, basically the breadcrumbs leading right up to the door. And it turns out they don't perceive themselves as having been vested with the authority to actually investigate any of the information. All they're doing is taking it and writing it down. And so that we have to get this panel in place and others in Congress to do the active investigations, to issue the subpoenas to people, to get the documentation, to be able to follow up on it. But as of this particular point, there are lots of reasonable assumptions that can be made that after 80 years of active engagement with the UFO phenomenon, that it would be virtually impossible to believe that there haven't been some steps taken to establish communication with them, because it's clear that there are some kind of protocols that seem to be operational, that obviously they're not attacking us, you know, that there's some private companies are attacking their UFO craft. But as of right now, there's been no active military engagement between the two sides. And very importantly, there's at least 6 different species that are coming. There appear to be some sort of protocols among themselves, because they're all refraining from attacking us, from refraining from publicly revealing themselves. So there's obviously sort of a regime that's operational of different protocols that are in place. We don't know yet that there's any formal treaty of any sort yet, but these are things that if you could get representatives in Congress that are doing their job, you know, that it's their constitutional obligation to oversee this particular process, to not let national security state advocates be the one to control our international and intergalactic relations. You know, we've got to have the people involved in this and the elected representatives. So we don't know yet that for sure that there's any treaty, that there appear to be a number of operational protocols, but they haven't been codified yet. That's as far as we can tell right now. Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I'll repeat it so we can
In
hear.
choosing the committee of 9, like there's a
Yeah.
lot of chances to get somebody that's really biased, or they're going to like have a, you know, like there's a final decision, like you said, the president of the
Yes.
United States,
Yeah.
but that you can put these people forward as your best picks, right?
That's right.
But who would make that final decision? I guess you're saying just one.
It's the president.
Oh,
The
boy.
president,
Okay.
as of right now, the Congress of the United States is in the Senate is sort of capitulating to the executive branch under this bizarre doctrine that somehow the limited authority that's been granted to the president by the Constitution to have him or her be the commander in chief of the United States military in the event that they're called into service for the United States, that somehow the executive branch has extrapolated upon that to suggest that they're uniquely in charge of all foreign policy, you know, which is ridiculous. As a constitutional scholar, I know that isn't true, but that they've capitulated to the executive branch over time, that needs to be taken back now. That under the Article 1 power of the Congress of the United States, they're specifically designated in Article 1, Section 8, that they're specifically directed to exercise authority governing the military services of the country. And that's their constitutional obligation. So what we've got to do is, one of the things our institute is going to be doing is having a petition sent out to have elected candidates that are running for office sign an agreement that they are dedicated to getting full disclosure of the UFO issue. And then we're authorized, even as a 501c3 organization, to reveal who has signed the agreement and who hasn't. So that if people in a given congressional district have the choice between 2 different candidates and one has agreed to support disclosure and the other one won't sign it, then they know whether to vote for one or the other. So that's where we are now. Well, it's interesting that the criteria that have been set up are that they cannot be briefed in already on the issue. They cannot be part of the legacy group. Okay, that's one of the requirements. And if they're going to be active people in government at all, they can have this position, but where they're going to have a staff that's going to be able to do a lot of this stuff. But we're not going to be nominating anybody who's in an official government position. Okay, and very importantly, if our institute sets forth a group of 9 people who be on the panel, and none of them are accepted by the president, we could conceivably organize that panel to be its own panel who are going to be making recommendations for policy, et cetera. So, I mean, this whole process that's going to be going on now is going to involve us now that we're not going to get shunted off by looking like we're participating in some mock program. Like, we nominate a whole bunch of people, nobody even knows who they are, and the president picks their two sons and daughter, to be on the panel. That we're going to make that clear that here are the people that we think ought to be, and we're going to try to have people who will agree to function as that they've made a commitment that they'll spend the time and energy to do it. And if we can raise funds, for example, from the citizenry to say, we'll pay you what you would have been paid pursuant to the statute to serve in these positions, and you do the same thing. And that we'll put together the funds to give you a staff, and you'll hire the staff that you would have hired, so that there's basically citizens taking this under our control, okay? But that we're using the format that the Congress already agreed was a reasonable format, so they shouldn't be able to push back unless they kind of insist that they're just going to let the president do whatever he or she wants to do, which we cannot allow any longer. Okay, so let's just do it. One of the other questions from online.
So there was a question about the ET species. You talked about how the one that seems to be the praying mantis seemed to be in charge.
The mantis.
Where did that come from? Like, where's the?
Okay. Where the source of that is numerous interviews of different people in the field who have been abducted and have found themselves in a setting where more than one of the species are actually present at the time when they're abducted, that they're either brought to a base, a military base or an underground base or in some sort of a craft, and that there's more than one of the species there. There seems to be a consistent pattern that if in fact more than one of the species are present, if one of them is a mantis person, they seem to be the one giving directions to everyone. That's where that one comes from. And we'll have a copy of those interviews.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me using this microphone? Just to answer that question in another way, we have all of the archives of Barbara Lamb, who is, she said, I don't know, I trust you all in your integrity. She was worried about all of her clients that she had seen for 30 years. She was the first therapist ever to begin helping people who had been abducted and were traumatized by it. And she's a very saintly person. She's a wonderful human being. And anyway, she gave us her archives. We've digitalized all of the tapes. We're now starting to work on all the files. This is another project we could use some help for. And but I just want to say, she told me, and I trust her, she would not make this up. She had a friend who is a contractor who is working on, building things in between the area of LA and Palm Springs. There's some hills and stuff, and he was tunneling into a hill. And as he tunneled in, he realized there was a hallway in there. So he went down the hallway inside this hill and turned the corner, and there was a room with different ETs in it, different species. And he told his friend, who was a person who worked in the social services in Los Angeles, and asked her if she wanted to go there, and he took her there.
Alive or dead?
Alive.
They're all alive.
They were all alive.
Yeah.
And he took her with him to go down the same tunnel, went around the corner into this room. There these different ETs were, and over there in the corner was a mantis.
Person. A
Person.
mantis being.
A mantis being. A mantis man. and it was lavender color, and it was all really tall. And the thing that's so interesting is that the instant that they saw one another, they knew they had known one another before, and there was a deep love that this woman and this mantis had.
Mantis being.
Very, very deep. And so, they embraced and stuff. But that's the story I remember that has to do with the mantis, and I am certain that Barbara Lamb is telling the truth.
Okay. So, okay, let's have a couple more questions. We don't want to lose everybody. Yes.
7 rumors is a significant thing.
These are all, this is one of the kind of major speculations that's running around now, is that because the people have been so puzzled about what the big deal is that's going on now. Why is everybody coming forward? Why is the Defense Department authorizing some of these people to talk? Why is it that they think that it's important to get some of this information out? What's getting ready to happen? Why is this such a big rush to get this done? And so people have started speculating. You're kind of filling in the answer to that. And then, as you know, in this particular field, there's always a half a dozen people that are perfectly willing to offer, you know, a full detailed explanation that they've gotten messages on their molars, you know, that they say, you know, and they start filling in these things. And you have 2 or 3 or 4 different alternatives, explanations of this. None of them have been confirmed. But there are other things that are happening. For example, the Kogi people, this major group from Colombia, I believe, you know, has come down from the top of the mountains and said that, you know, that they're aware of the fact that that unless we had resolved the nuclear weapons problem and the pollution problem on our planet by, you know, last July of last year, that over the next 18-month period, there's going to be a total collapse of all of our civilization, et cetera. You know, some of they were very specific about that stuff, and they come with kind of this additional kind of sense of authority of these indigenous people, but nobody's been able to confirm any of those things yet. So we're all functioning on the grounds that we have a matter of a few years to be able to solve these problems.
And then, have you seen the age of disclosure yet?
I haven't seen it yet. No, I know the guys that have been in it. I know the guys that helped make it. I know the guys that saw it, and I've talked with them.
Feel like it'll.
Yes, yes. I think the age of disclosure documentary that Dan Farah did, he basically co-produced it with Luis Elizondo, and it's got 34 different highly classified officials coming in and explicitly pronouncing the fact that we're in possession of one or more of the extraterrestrial non-human spacecraft, that we are in fact engaged in this process of reverse engineering that's going on, et cetera. And it's very, very effective. They say the frontal interview, for example, Jay Stratton, who was the head of OSAP, the Advanced Weapons Special Access Program in the military, specifically states right face forward to the camera that he's been in a structure with one of the UFOs, and has been seen one of the beings. He says it right there, and this is the guy who was the head of the entire program at OSAP. So these are very authoritative people that are saying this, and I think it's definitely going to move the needle. I think that the members of Congress, the House and the Senate, this may even force the Senate Intelligence Committee to come forward with some of the public witnesses, the people that have testified behind closed doors under oath already to them. There's 40 different witnesses, and so that they can pick which ones they really think that they want to bring forward, and do that right away following the release of the movie. Okay, so look, let's have another one from the Zoom people.
Sure. So there was a question about, has there been any documentation that you trust about how we, the human species, was somehow genetically modified through alien or extraterrestrial?
That not yet at this point. I know that there's lots and lots of information around about ancient writings and interpretations that have been given to them that have believed that there've been this kind of cross fertilization, and there's all kinds of information going on now about the large mummies that have been recovered in the deep mine shaft down in Peru. That the Peruvian Minister of Culture has now reversed themselves and said that these are real, and that it's clear that these beings, that have 3 fingers and long arms, and they're humanoid, But there were some preliminary DNA research done on these mummies and have said that it has human DNA along with some reptilian DNA and some third form of DNA that doesn't match any species that they have any records of. And that they're now in the process of trying to determine whether that's accurate. There's a lot of condescending attitudes on the part of American scientists. Oh, those are people in Peru or Colombia somewhere, and so that we're in the process now of talking with people, trying to get responsible research done on those things to see if that is supportable. But we do know that the information about the abduction program in the hybrid program that we're talking about is quite clear, that there are very, very credible accounts of that going on right now currently, as distinct from the stuff several thousands of years ago. But we're looking into that now.
To see that movie? Do you remember the title of it, about the mummies in?
No. It's The Age of Disclosure is the one that,
That's one.
that
But also
yeah.
I saw about the thing, the skeletons that were
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Peru. And I
Yeah.
thought that was very powerful too.
Yeah, but we're being very guarded about this at the Institute as of right now. We're in direct communication with Jaime. Jaime Maussan is the one who is in possession of some of those bodies. We're in communication with all the people who are doing the test. We're involved in wanting to make certain that this is done extremely carefully and very professionally because of the importance of a thing like this. We want to make sure. So nothing yet is been so dispositive that we're willing as an institute to endorse that yet. Okay, Dan.
So as we transition over the course of months and years to move from the small group of people who are in this community to other populations that are going to come on board in this conversation, switching the conversation a little bit to what does this mean about who we are today? As we stand here, what do I do when I go to sleep? What do I do when I wake up in the morning? Now that I'm kind of more open to this idea that I'm a cosmic being, how is that going to change my life? Or as the old farmer used to say, how's it going to help me grow corn?
Mm-hmm. Well, the bottom line is, I think that what this is going to do is it's going to cause people who have a false sense of attachment to a particular narrative that has been sold to people by the mainstream culture, is going to cause people to be much more suspicious about the validity of that. And therefore, it's going to cause people to be a little bit destabilized at the present time, because one of the reasons people attach themselves to these commonplace narratives is for a sense of security. And that there's going to be a period here where that kind of false sense of security is going to be challenged. And so therefore, what I would recommend when you say, what are we going to do when we get up in the morning and when we go to, is a meditation is actually the strongest recommendation that we can make. That if people come to even just transcendental meditation, it's not generic to any particular one religious tradition, but just the practice of meditation, of going through the deep breathing exercises, which you can find out virtually anywhere, and do this thing in a regular way in the morning and in the evening, that you get into a sort of state of more and more unconditioned consciousness, and that you begin to get to experience a sense of calm, a sense of confidence in this state that is unattached to any one specific narrative. And that's, I think, the very best thing that people can do. And what they're going to start to discover is that from that state of consciousness, if you participate in the process of trying to figure out what the specific amendments are that need to be made in our geopolitical and political and economic and religious structures on our planet, that we're going to be able to construct a new paradigm worldview that people are going to be able to move to, because people are going to be very reluctant to let go of their own particular worldview until they know where they're going. And that's what we need to do right now. I think a systematic program of meditation in preparing for this, to approach this as whatever their particular sense of spiritual experience is to view this as a spiritual experience. and have it fit into the entire structure of beliefs in their religious tradition as to this extraordinarily moment, that this may well be perceived as something like the eschaton, the arrival of a particular ascendance in consciousness of our human family that transforms everything in the world, and they need to get ready for this. Okay.
Separation.
Oh, yes, that's what it is. It's a matter of overcoming the sense of alienation. Yes. Mhm. Yeah. That what it appears to be at the present time is that the mode by means of which these beings transit from their star system to here, and that they even move from one place on the planet to another, has to do with an ability to accelerate the vibrational frequency of their material manifestation, and so that they can then, it looks like they're materializing. In fact, there's actual videos of these materializing, these craft. There's one that Matthew Brown talked about in a lengthy interview with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp just last week, where they had a set of Russian intelligence vessels out in the Pacific that were hanging out in this one spot for a few days, and it began to be suspicious. And so they put them under surveillance. And then all of a sudden, this huge football-sized triangular craft just slowly materialized up over where they were. And then a huge ball of light started ascending out of the top and out of the bottom of this craft until it became this bright light. And then it just shot off like that. And so that it gives the appearance of coming from some other dimension. And that's what I think a lot of this is accounted for. And so that even historically, if all of a sudden you see one of these beings kind of materialize in your room or dematerialize, it gives the impression that they're coming out of some other dimension, so that your perception of it is really is controlled by what your set of assumptions are. If you say, whoa, this is a person just materializing out of thin air, one of the things you might sense, oh, this must be some other vibrational dimension. And it may well be, but it may be a vibrational dimension that is the product of some technology that they have. And so otherwise you avoid the conflation with historical stuff about angels appearing, and so that we're getting set to come to grips with all of those things, because that people have been led to believe in a certain totally unexplained set of mythology. Oh, that these angels just materialize from somewhere, and they have wings, and they go. But you got to remember, these mythologies were designed back at a point where 99% of all the people in the world were completely illiterate, and that they never traveled more than 50 miles away from the spot where they were born. And so the Catholic Church and other major traditions have put together a narrative that they've put to people that are supposed to just believe it on faith. And even though it didn't make any ultimate sense to them, they've just believed in it without knowing how it fit into anything. And that's what's getting ready to happen. I think that we're going to discover that this is all one piece, and it has to do with different levels of vibrational frequency of reality, and that you can direct a human intention to a particular frequency of this, and basically by direct intent you can collapse the wave function of the different possibilities in the vibrational frequencies to manifest the next microsecond of reality, and they can do it. And I think that there's a technology that they've figured out to assist them in doing that. And that's maybe what you encountered. Yeah. Is there another one from the people out in Zoom? Okay.
We have these wonderful large.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
you want to take a question?
Yes.
Hi, I'm curious to hear if you'd be open to sharing more about the individual species that you are aware of. The reptilian and the Pleiadian in particular, in light of what you shared about there being DNA evidence of hybridization with reptilian and Earth beings. And then, you know, sharing that you felt they were harmless and just wanting to know what information you have. And then also, in terms of the Pleiadian star beings, are you aware of multiple Pleiadian facets, or can you illuminate some of the harmful qualities that you alluded to, or just talk more specifically about the different species?
Okay. As I say, this one about the Pleiadians is almost generic unto itself because it involves such dramatically different information I mean, you might say that if you've got a 6 foot tall reptilian who has a head and a torso and legs and arms and stuff, that's out of all the different shapes that another being from another star system might have, there's a lot of coincidence that they seem to be very similar to like humanoid beings, you know. But when you get to the Pleiadians, where they're you know 6 feet tall, blonde hair, blue eyed, you know, Homo sapiens, that is a whole category itself. It needs to be investigated as a whole. The other beings, the little guys like this that look like little miniature people, but are different in some substantial ways, it gets to be a question of like what you would consider harmful conduct. Clearly abducting people, you know, involuntarily, in zapping them to the point where you can't move at all, and taking them on board a craft and involuntarily examining them is intrusive, it's offensive, it's assaultive. So you could call that bad activity. But most of the people that have gone through that experience have it more than one time. And then when it happens over a repeated number of times, they end up eventually having some sort of telepathic exchange and communication with these beings, and they start getting information from the beings, advocating that we do something to get rid of the nuclear weapons, to stop polluting our planet, to protect our planet's environment, et cetera. And the people John Mack writes about this in his second book called Passport to the Cosmos, and where he actually, and I would recommend that to you, because he tracks the process by means of which people evolve in their thinking about these kind of interactions that they're having, to the point where when they thought what happened initially frightened them and seemed to be a really assaultive kind of activity, they began to get a general better sense of it in context of what was happening, and they end up being kind of more sanguine about what the experiences they're having. Now, then there's that whole other category, which is the involuntary impregnation of women. That's deeply frightening and offensive. There've been a handful of instances that I know of, and we've talked to some of the people that have also become eventually adjusted to this reality and have come to view themselves as being involved in some extraordinary passage of our human species becoming interwoven with other species to be able to survive in outer space. You know, there've been some high level absorptions of that. Now, there's only 2 instances out of, and I've been at this for like 48 years, okay? And there are 2 instances that I know of where people have reported kind of assaultive conduct. Now, one of them, 3 of them actually, one of them I don't believe at all. You know, this whole thing with the base down in Texas, with the guy that said he got his hand shot off and stuff by one of these ET people. I don't believe that at all, because we've interviewed people who went to high school with the kid and he got his thumb cut off in an accident when he was in high school, you know, and so I don't believe that at all. But the other ones is a little island of people in the South Pacific that they had an experience where a number of UFOs appeared, and that they shot these beams of light at them, which ended up taking little chunks out of a person. a little chunk of skin. It's like a sample that was taken from them. Now that's assaultive, but it's more analogous to like us capturing a chimpanzee or something and taking a little skin sample or samples from them. And the analogy that I think is applicable in that instance is that the same analogy of us capturing a lower life form and taking samples from them. So this wasn't intended to injure them, but it frightened them. And they viewed it as kind of an assaultive undertaking. And they reported it to officials, government officials, and government officials sent in military people to try to protect them. And then there were no other instances, apparently. But then there's this one other one, Ingo Swann, who was a participant in the Stanford Research Institute remote viewing program. He ended up being taken by one of his mentors who were training him in remote viewing and brought him to appears to be the Yukon up in Alaska, and brought him to a place where there was this big lake, and said that they had indications that there was going to be a UFO appearance there. And they had sort of precognated this happening, and they went there and the craft came up out of the water. It came up out of the lake, and it was kind of dripping water, and it seemed to be engaged in taking in water, taking on board water from the lake. And suddenly the craft became aware of the fact that they were there watching them. And Ingo Swann and the other fellow dove behind a rock, and this craft shot a beam at them and hit the rock where they were hiding behind, and apparently chipped it. And that was the single assaultive undertaking that had been taken, but it wasn't clear whether that was one of the ET vehicles or this was a man-made vehicle that was what they call a reproduction vehicle, an RV they call them, or an alien reconstructed, an ARV. But they do appear to have achieved some level of success in back engineering, reverse engineering some of the technology to be able to build some of these craft. And so there have been these craft that have been around, not the full-blown theory of Dr. Greer that is suggesting what they're going to do is have a false flag attack using these alien reconstruction vehicles and pretending that they're ETs attacking our planet to justify, a war against them. But just this particular vehicle, Ingo Swann had some suspicion that may have been a man-made craft that shot this beam at them. But those are the three instances that I've heard of. But you do have to take into account this assaultive activity of kidnapping people and involuntarily examining them, and very importantly, this other more assaultive thing of involuntarily impregnating women and then removing the child, and taking the child away and developing the child ex utero. That's very assaultive and needs to be addressed as a matter of human rights.
Here's a
Yeah.
question from Serena.
She says several countries like the UK, France, Brazil, Mexico, and Turkey have released alien files to the public in recent years.
Yeah.
Are you collaborating with them?
Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes. Yeah, we have all of those files, all those records. We're in direct communication with those authorities. They're being very forward-leaning and being cooperative. And there are others that are in process right now. Okay. And so that we're going to be gathering all that information together and trying to make that available, because a lot of people, they believe information that comes from government official sources more than they believe it from other people. And so we find that to be of some value in what they're going to be. Yes, we're very much in communication with those. Yes. Yeah.
I'd like to know, what kind of connection do you have or not have with MUFON?
Oh, yeah. We're very close with MUFON. In fact, MUFON, we're in the process of formulating a kind of more formal agreement with them. And a lot of the MUFON volunteers that work for them in gathering information and stuff, we're going to be having be citizens for disclosure, because they. Oh, MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network. The Yeah. 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 So MUFON has been around for decades and have been doing kind of Herculean work, for decades, sending, training people to go out and interview people who've had a UFO encounter experience. They have forms to fill out, giving the details of what the events were that took place. And they have a huge file of all these different encounters that have been had. And we've met with the national director of MUFON to discuss this kind of partnership relationship, this alliance that we're going to be having with MUFON, and having a lot of them serve as the coordinators for the Citizens for Disclosure in their own congressional district. So it's a very close, positive relationship with MUFON. Yes.
I should add that we're already working with MUFON in different places, and we have an alliance with them in Texas. I spent a lot of time talking with the fellow who's the head of MUFON in Texas last year at one point. And now, because we've got state coordinators, Citizens for Disclosure state coordinators growing, our state coordinator now in Texas is going to be sitting down with the MUFON folks, and they're going to be talking about how we can support one another, whether they become CFD sites themselves or whether we just all become friends, so that we support them and they support us locally and in the state. We're building an alliance. In addition to building the grassroots teams, we're building a national alliance. So if you're part of an organization that you would like to be in this alliance for disclosure, please let us know, because we're hoping that by the end of this year, we'd have 25 organizations in an alliance, and then just keep growing.
Okay. Yes.
What do you think about
We've had this discussion for some time, Stephen and I. The fact of the matter is there's no doubt in my mind that the national security state operatives have consistently engaged in making plans to do very bad things. That, for example, there is the one that I ended up talking with Stephen about this originally, that I was aware of, this thing called Operation Northwoods. It was a plan that was actually promulgated by the Joint Chiefs of Staff back in 1962, in which they proposed actually dressing up a lot of Cuban refugees in Cuban Fidel Castro Cuban government uniforms, in attacking our military base at Guantanamo, and actually blowing up a ship and killing American service people, and also blowing up a shopping mall in Miami, focusing specifically on a shopping mall on a busy day where a lot of Cuban refugees would be shopping, and doing that and blaming it on Fidel Castro's government so that they could justify, attacking the island and taking it back, because they thought that Fidel Castro and Che Guevara and the other people were being insolent in not recognizing the United States as having the controlling authority over them. And so that military mind of running out these war game scenarios and these in genuine false flag attacks is a very real phenomenon. And so what's happened is that Dr. Greer, knowing about that, has said, look, if you take into account the fact that they're spending so much time and resources trying to reverse engineer these craft to the point of being able to actually fly some of these craft, you shouldn't put past them, having figured out some kind of potential plan of generating a false flag attack using these, and then blaming the extraterrestrials, and using that as a mechanism for organizing people to give massive increased military funding to the national security state. All of that is perfectly logical. What I've always maintained is that just because it's logical doesn't mean they're going to do that, or that they're planning to do that. Just like there are war game scenarios that we have of how we would bomb the Soviet Union if we had a thermonuclear war. And they have plans to how they would just deploy the bombs if they attacked us. It doesn't mean they're planning to attack us. It means they're making plans. In that particular case, Dr. Greer and I have had this conversation for some time. And what the position that he takes is that even if in fact that projection is below a 51% level of probability that they're going to actually do that, it's important to forewarn people about the possibility of something like that being planned so as to act as a prophylactic to deter them from doing it. Okay, and that all makes perfect sense. But it's different than saying that there are sources that tell you that they're getting ready to do it. Okay, that's where the differences come. And a lot of that has to do with a particular philosophy of how you present information. You know, like for example, in a trial, a lot of times the prosecutor will come out and say, here's what happened. This person did this and killed this person and robbed this store, et cetera. And they say it just as though they knew it. Only they're not the firsthand witnesses to it. They're just saying it because they think that in order to persuade people, you have to tell them that it's true. Instead of saying, look, there's a 93% probability or a 55% probability. People don't function. They don't mobilize based upon some of that probability. And so there's been some discussion going on now with Dr. Greer and myself and others about how to present the information that at one and the same time acknowledges that our national security state people are perfectly capable of those kind of things, but it doesn't mean that they're actually going to do it. And still how you can prepare people to maximize the probabilities that you can deter them from doing anything like that. So that's the complex answer to that question. No, that's not true. That's not true. Because I know the person who keeps saying that they were told that by Werner von Braun, and it didn't happen. I'm sure that didn't happen. Oh yeah, no, I do not believe that. I've never believed that. Okay, so yes.
They're safe, were they alive, or
Yeah.
what happened to that
Yeah.
biological material, and what do we know about it?
Oh yeah, that there apparently a significant number of UFO beings or ET beings that have been taken into custody. They've recovered a number of bodies that one of the national security state people that is knowledgeable about this actually told me that in one particular downing of a craft that they recovered 16 bodies in one incident. But there are others that there's information about one of the particular beings at Roswell surviving for a short period of time. There's another, I've interviewed a fellow by the name of Oscar Wolf, who was a clerk typist for Operation Blue Book, who reported to me on his deathbed, literally, called me and had me come to his bedside. And he was dying and told me the details of a face-to-face encounter with a UFO being that had been taken into custody and was at S4 in Nevada. And he saw the being, and his supervisor, his commander, was in the room with the being having a telepathic exchange, and he stayed outside. Oscar thought it looked demonic and was afraid of it and didn't want to go near it and stayed outside. But he provided direct testimony of having seen the being right there. They had him all dressed in this like blue jumpsuit and stuff, and he was in this room, and he was being quite cooperative in communicating telepathically information to them, and reported to them according to these cards that he was shown, where they had notes that were taken from telepathic interviews with the being. That they said, what are you doing here? Where do you come from? What are you doing here? He said that he was one of a cadre of individuals from different star systems that had been tasked with going around inside the galaxy to different planets where life had been gestated to kind of monitor this state of development. And they asked him the follow-up question, well, who tasked you to do that? Who's the one that, and he said, well, you people would refer to it probably as God, but it's very different than you think. That's what he said. And he said he never wanted to tell anybody that because he didn't believe him. He said that he thought he was demonic. Well, it turns out that Oscar was a member of a thing called the Worldwide Church of God that were extremely fundamentalist and profoundly conservative, and that he had just harbored that secret his whole life. But on his deathbed, he wanted to tell somebody that the being had actually said it, and he had never told anybody. You know, so I've had those kind of experiences. Yes.
The disclosure legislation, and is the new pope going to be a disclosure pope?
Well, those are two questions.
Yeah.
Trump has stated, whatever value that has stated that he was supportive of full disclosure. But the fact of the matter is, while he has signed an executive order specifically ordering the military services to and all of the intelligence agencies to release the information about the JFK assassination, he has not signed the executive order telling them to release all of this information, even though he has said publicly that he would do that. So he hasn't done that. But there's all kinds of people in the administration. John Ratcliffe, who is the head of the CIA, has indicated his support of revealing it all. Even Marco Rubio, who is now the Secretary of State, and also the acting National Security Advisor, and very interestingly, as of last week, been appointed to be the head of the National Archives, which is where they're supposed to bring all the information. And Rubio was one of the primary sponsors of this 64-page bill. So he's an extraordinarily important person inside the administration. You know, and I've talked with Bobby Kennedy about it. Robert is totally supportive of the full disclosure, who's a member of the cabinet. And there are other cabinet members who have also stated that they're totally supportive of it. So that this is something that even inside the administration, the executive branch that has historically been responsible for suppressing it, are saying that they want this to happen. And so that I believe if we can get, the Senate will pass the 64-page bill again. If we can get it past the House of Representatives, I'm confident that Trump will sign it. Okay. And then he'll be appointing this board. I'm not highly confident that he's going to pay a lot of attention to who we nominate, because the way the statute is presently written, he is completely free to ignore who we nominate. It's not like a Supreme Court thing, you know, where you know that he has to abide by the decisions of the Senate and House. Yes. No, Robert is backing this happening, you know, and so I think that there's, if we can succeed specifically in the House of Representatives to get the new head of the Senate, of the House Intelligence Committee, Dan Crenshaw, to support and champion the passage of the 64-page bill that's coming over to the House from the Senate, and that we can get Michael Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House, to agree to put the bill on the floor for a vote, then I'm sure that out of the 435 members of Congress, we'll probably get 400 of them to approve the bill. And that then I'm confident that Trump will in fact appoint this board that the bill requires. But I'm not yet confident that he'll appoint the people that have been nominated. You know, that he may just decide to appoint anybody he feels like, and you know what that looks like. So we're not sure yet, but that's going to be a very, very important group. And the staff that is hired by those 9 people are going to be extremely important. Okay. And I think we have a good idea who the chief of staff may be, who is one of the major drafters of the bill. And if it is, then that would be a good thing because we have very close communication with them. Okay. So look, I really appreciate it. It's almost 10 o'clock now. You've been very generous with your time. Okay.